Two groups of the same animal can live only a few hundred kilometers apart, yet follow completely different traditions. One group uses a particular tool, another ignores it. One population sings one version of a song, while its neighbors sing another. Young animals watch, copy, practice, and sometimes carry those behaviors into the next generation. That sounds suspiciously familiar, but calling it culture creates a dangerous question. If culture exists outside humanity, then where does instinct end and tradition begin? For most of history, culture was treated as one of humanity's private clubs. Language, customs, techniques, music, traditions. These seem to require human minds and human societies. Animals could learn, certainly, but learning was often imagined as something simpler. Find food, avoid predators, remember where the water is. Then researchers started comparing animal communities. Chimpanzees immediately made the situation awkward. Wild chimpanzees use sticks, leaves, stones, and other objects in remarkably flexible ways. They may probe for insects, process food, collect resources, or use leaves in specific routines. More importantly, researchers have documented behavioral differences among chimpanzee communities that cannot always be explained simply by available resources or genetics. A technique common in one community may be rare or absent somewhere else. And young chimpanzees do not receive instruction manuals. They spend years watching older individuals. They observe hands, tools, targets, mistakes, and successful results. Learning can be slow. A juvenile may repeatedly attempt a technique before becoming competent. In some cases, social relationships influence which behaviors are most likely to spread. Field research has provided evidence that tool use traditions can be socially transmitted within chimpanzee communities. Science plus one. Think about what that means. A chimp is not merely solving a problem. It may be solving the problem the way its community solves the problem. That tiny difference is enormous. Imagine two neighboring towns. Both have kitchens. Both have identical ingredients. Yet one town rolls its dough one way, while the other insists that method is basically culinary treason. Humans call that tradition. With chimpanzees, scientists become slightly more careful with the vocabulary. The strongest evidence appears when researchers can rule out easier explanations. Maybe one forest has different insects. Maybe certain plants grow only in one location. Maybe genetics make one population behave differently. These possibilities matter. But when behaviors spread through observation, persist socially, and vary among groups, the case for animal culture becomes much stronger. And chimpanzees are only the beginning. Now travel from the forest into the ocean. Male humpback whales produce extraordinarily complex songs. Within a population, whales can share broadly similar song patterns, and those patterns change over time. Even more remarkable, song versions can spread between populations across huge distances. Researchers studying humpbacks in the South Pacific have tracked patterns moving between populations, with whales apparently adopting songs heard elsewhere. Entire song structures can change as cultural information moves across the ocean. Nature plus one. This is not genetic evolution happening in a few months. Genes do not hear a catchy track and immediately update themselves. The whales are learning. A new song can enter a population, spread socially, and eventually become dominant. Picture an underwater music trend traveling thousands of kilometers without radio, streaming services, or a teenager saying, "You seriously haven't heard this yet?" And the songs do not simply remain frozen. They evolve. Patterns change. Elements are modified. Populations may converge or diverge. Researchers can sometimes reconstruct relationships between whale groups by comparing what they sing. Culture, in this sense, behaves almost like an invisible migration. Information moves even when bodies do not permanently move. Dolphins make the story stranger. In Shark Bay, Western Australia, some bottlenose dolphins perform a behavior known as sponging. A dolphin takes a marine sponge and places it over its snout while searching along the seafloor. The sponge appears to protect the dolphin's sensitive rostrum while it probes for prey hidden in rough substrate. The remarkable part is not merely that dolphins use tools. It is how the behavior spreads. Research has shown strong evidence for social transmission, particularly through maternal lines. Young dolphins can acquire the technique from their mothers and continue using it later. Bnaz. So a dolphin may inherit something besides genes. It can inherit knowledge. That distinction matters because genetic information changes across generations through biological reproduction. Cultural information can move much faster. One successful behavior can potentially spread because others observe it, imitate it, or learn it through repeated association. And dolphins have produced other socially learned foraging strategies too. Different communities may specialize in different techniques depending on local ecology and social networks. That gives culture an evolutionary advantage. You do not need every individual to rediscover everything. Someone else can make the expensive mistakes. You watch. You copy. You improve your odds. Birds reveal the same principle in a much louder form. Many songbirds must learn important parts of their vocal behavior from other birds. Young individuals listen to adults, practice, and gradually develop their own songs. That creates dialects. Birds of the same species living in different places may sound noticeably different. Local song patterns can persist across generations because youngsters learn from parents and neighbors. Researchers studying birdsong describe cultural transmission as an important force shaping these vocal traditions. Royal Society Publishing +1. Move a bird into another social environment, and what it hears can influence what it eventually produces. That is why calling every animal sound purely instinctive misses something important. The capacity to learn may be biological, but the exact thing being learned can be cultural. Humans work similarly. We are biologically capable of language, yet babies are not genetically programmed to speak English, Vietnamese, Spanish, or Navajo. They absorb whichever language surrounds them. Animal culture does not need to look exactly like human culture to belong in the same general category. That is the key. Scientists usually use a practical definition. A behavior becomes culturally interesting when it is acquired or maintained through social learning and shared among members of a group. Under that definition, culture does not require museums. It does not require religion. It definitely does not require someone arguing about whether pineapple belongs on pizza. It requires information passing socially. Once you see culture that way, the animal kingdom starts looking different. A whale song becomes more than a sound. A dolphin's hunting method becomes more than individual cleverness. A chimpanzee's stick becomes more than a stick. A bird dialect becomes more than background noise. Each can carry information from one mind into another. And that creates a powerful conservation problem. If an animal population disappears, we might lose more than bodies and genes. We could lose traditions. Chimpanzee behavioral diversity, for example, has been found to decline in areas heavily affected by humans. That means protecting a species may also involve protecting the social environments where specialized knowledge survives. Science. You cannot simply replace a vanished community with animals of the same species and assume everything returns. Some knowledge may be gone. A feeding technique learned over generations may disappear. A local vocal tradition may fade. A migration habit may break when experienced individuals vanish. Culture can therefore become part of an animal population's survival toolkit. And this finally answers the question. Yes, strong evidence indicates that culture is not uniquely human. But human culture remains unusual in scale, complexity, accumulation, and speed. We build libraries, legal systems, scientific institutions, global networks, and technologies that preserve knowledge far beyond individual lifetimes. Still, the foundation may be much older than civilization. Watch someone. Learn something. Pass it forward. A young chimpanzee studying an experienced adult, a dolphin following its mother, a whale absorbing a changing song, and a bird copying its neighborhood dialect are doing versions of that same ancient trick. Evolution gave animals bodies. But in some species, social learning gave communities something else. A memory larger than one individual. And perhaps that is the most fascinating way to think about culture. Not as something humans invented, but as information that learned how to survive by traveling from mind to mind.